people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
The undisputed super featherweight champion of the world, Alicia, the Baumgardner.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Alicia Baumgardner, part of Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis undercard. The undercard for the November 14th exhibition boxing match between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis at the Casilla Center in Miami has been revealed, with both men's and women's title fights MVP announced earlier today. As you can imagine, I was never all that enthused about Jake versus Gervonta, but the undercard, I figured that MVP would put together a solid undercard because they usually put together solid cards. Whoever their matchmaker is, they know what they're doing. I've taken in quite a few of MVP shows, MVP prospects. Being honest with you, they're usually pretty entertaining, their cards are, and that's why I think that MVP is further legitimizing themselves as a major player within the boxing space that could fill the gaps left behind by Top Rank, by PBC. The event will be streamed globally live on Netflix. Alicia Baumgardner, 16-1 with 7 knockouts, will defend her WBA, WBO, and IBF Women's Junior Lightweight titles against Layla Beaudoin, 13-1 with 2 knockouts in the co-main event. The fight will be contested under men's championship fight rules for 12 3-minute rounds. A true test of the fighters' fitness. You know, the women, they usually go for 10-2s, and for the most part, that's what most of them are used to. This will take both fighters out of their comfort zones. Consistency is what keeps me sharp and makes me dangerous, Baumgardner said in a statement to ESPN. Fighting for 12 threes represents equality. Equality in boxing means giving champions a platform to show their greatness. I am here to show the world that I am built for any and everything, and still, Baumgardner recently relinquished the WBC title due to WBC President Mauricio Suleiman opposing 3-minute rounds for women's boxing. A similar situation happened with Amandia Serrano when she vacated her WBC title in protest of the sanctioning body's refusal to sanction her request for a 12-round, 3-minute title defense. Mauricio is sticking to his guns. Initially, I thought that Alicia vacated the title because she was set to move up in weight. Now we understand why she vacated it. And now that it's vacant, it may go to the number 1 contender via the WBC's ranked standings, Delphine Persoon. She's ranked at number 1. Layla's ranked at number 2, but we know it's not going to go to Layla because Layla's fighting Alicia. Ranked at number 3 is Elham Mekhaled. And so, the next WBC champion may end up being either Delphine or Elham, both of which are common opponents to Alicia Baumgardner. Back over to Alicia. Like Amanda Serrano and many other great champions before me, I believe women should have the choice to compete under the same rules as men. 12 rounds, 3 minutes per round, Baumgardner said. I have chosen to move forward in my career under those terms. My next championship fight will take place under those rules. And since the World Boxing Council does not currently allow women to fight under those terms, I've made the difficult decision to vacate my title. I respect the World Boxing Council and want to thank the WBC for all the support they've given me throughout my career. Becoming their champion was a career-defining honor, and I look forward to and plan to one day fight for the WBC title again. WBC's on the wrong side of history. Their whole perspective is that it's not safe for women to fight for 12 3-minute rounds, even though it's been done before. It's not an isolated incident. Nevertheless, they are sticking to their guns in what is sort of a dicey subject. Some women, though not all, would like to box for 12 3-minute rounds instead of the customary 10-2s. I see the virtue of both. I don't actually have a problem with 10-2s because it makes for a more fast-paced boxing match, which lends itself to women's boxing's marketability. It's all action from the opening bell, though some fighters would like a little bit more time to work. Some fighters would like that additional minute within a round, in the rounds in the fight, so that they can pile on the damage and force a stoppage. The feeling is that if the women had a bit more time to break down their opponents, you would see more knockouts. And thus, the women boxers would be more marketable. That's the theory. Though, as stated, I see the virtue in 10-2s like I see the virtue in 12-3s. Both are fine by me. Now for the opponent, Layla is a solid fighter. I've seen her in action here and there. She used to box under the group Yvonne Michelle banner alongside Kim Clavel. Kim Clavel, who is now promoted by MVP, one of their many recent signings. Layla is a solid fighter, but physically, I don't think she's a match for Alicia Baumgardner. Alicia's not just a polished boxer, she's a hell of a physical specimen, and there are very few fighters at or around these weights that can match her speed, her sharpness.
Power.
I don't think Layla's a match, and I believe that's what will separate them. Alicia Baumgardner's physicality in tandem with her ring savvy. In men's junior middleweight news, reports are circulating that Xander Zayas has turned down Top Rank's suggested opponent Giovanni Santillán, who would be moving up in weight from 147 up to 154 for a fight, except that Xander doesn't want him to be his first title defense. For his first defense in January in Puerto Rico, he prefers a unification fight with newly crowned WBA champion Abass Baraou. Instead, these are just my thoughts. This is once again another example of what separates Xander Zayas from Virgil Ortiz, where Xander jumped at the opportunity to fight for a title and put pressure on Sebastian Fundora. Virgil did nothing. They were both mandatory challengers to the same fighter, and where Xander put pressure on Sebastian to fight, Virgil did nothing. Now here Xander is, as a reigning champion, already primed to unify titles with a fellow champion, while the best Virgil can do is keep busy with Erickson lubricant. This is what separates them. And you mean to tell me that Xander was scared of Virgil? I don't think so. Like I've been saying, I think Golden Boy did that for the optics. They set terms they knew that Xander would not accept, so that then they could accuse him of ducking. Except that Xander never rejected their offer. Instead, he counter-offered by saying he wants the fight in Puerto Rico, at which point they announced the Lubin fight. Abass Baraou. I respect Xander Zayas' ambition and his Boricua swagger. He means business. But an Abass Baraou fight for him is a very dangerous fight, as Abass Baraou is a rather durable mid-range to inside fighter, pressure fighter, who's not going to stop. And given that Xander Zayas isn't big on stopping power, that's what makes it dangerous. I don't think that Xander can hurt him. I don't think that Xander can discourage him. The most he can hope to do is work around him. Move around, use angles, use counters, but this is going to go the distance. Xander doesn't knock him out. For Xander, this would be the same stylistic matchup as the Jorge Perez-Garcia fight, and for Abass Baraou, this would be the same stylistic matchup as the Ioannis Tellez fight. It would be a repeat of those fights, just against better opposition. That Xander is better than Ioannis Tellez, but Abass Baraou is better than Jorge Perez-Garcia. To me, it's a 50-50 fight. Xander has the right style for the job. Xander is best described as a boxer-puncher. You will notice that the island of Puerto Rico has produced a good number of solid boxer-punchers, elite-level boxer-punchers like Felix Trinidad, Miguel Cotto, now Xander Zayas. The boxer-puncher-based style is to Puerto Rico what the pressure fighter-based style is to Mexico. It's that kind of dichotomy. Except that this pressure fighter isn't from Mexico, he's from Germany. Abass Baraou is not just some guy who walked into a gym and started wailing on a heavy bag. This guy has a solid amateur background and good experience in the paid ranks, having been in there with Jack Colquet, more recently Ioannis Tellez. Even though Xander has the right base style for the job, good height, good length, good movement, solid defense, it's not a given that he wins. It's not a guarantee. Boxer punchers usually beat pressure fighters. Usually. But there are exceptions. I take you back to the first Miguel Cotto versus Antonio Margarito fight. Cotto was the more nuanced boxer of the two, the more streamlined fighter, but the physicality, the sheer volume of punches and physicality from Antonio was enough to wear him down and wear him out, force him to take a knee, beaten into submission in the first fight. Cotto was a boxer puncher. It's like I said, usually boxer punchers beat pressure fighters, usually, but there are exceptions. Could Zayas versus Baraou be another? In the Cotto versus Margarito fight, the first one, you saw that Miguel Cotto couldn't really hurt Antonio. He couldn't put a dent in him. And when I look over at Zender and Abass, I wonder, can Zender put a dent in Abass? Can he hurt Abass? Because if he can't, he could unravel. He could. As the fight progresses and punches start to get in, the damage starts to set in, he could unravel. Top Rank wants a more PG maiden title defense for Xander Zayas. That's why they suggested that he fight Giovanni, a rather moderately sized welterweight who'd be a small fry at junior middle. Xander would be the safe bet to at minimum win a points decision against Giovanni, but against the boss Baraou, that's a different kettle of fish. Now, currently, Abass Baraou is under orders to satisfy his mandatory challenger, former undisputed champion Jermell Charlo, who's been hinting at not only a comeback to boxing, but a comeback to the junior middleweight division. That could be a hindrance for this fight. That Abass Baraou is not exactly free right now. He's on the hook, and he has to fight Jermell. But I thought you said you didn't think this fight would happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but until it's established that it's not going to happen, Abass Baraou is on the hook. Until such a time as Jermell makes it clear to the WBA he doesn't want to fight this guy next. Abass is not free right now to accept another fight. So we'll just have to see what happens. Elsewhere in the junior middleweight division, Jaron Ennis's promoter insists that he's the new Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford's future is in limbo. After scoring the undisputed super middleweight title with a definitive unanimous decision win over Canelo Alvarez, he has alluded to retirement, a move to 160, and defending his super middleweight titles while also shutting down runs at 154 and 175. If Matchroom Boxing had Eddie Hearn had it his way, he'd prefer that Crawford, 42-0 with 31 KOs, take on former unified welterweight champion Jaron Ennis, who's getting ready to make his junior middleweight debut this upcoming October 11th. Terence Crawford versus Jaron Ennis, for me, is the best fight in American boxing, Hearn told reporters on Wednesday, but it needs to be a payday for Crawford to get him interested because Crawford knows how good Boots is. I'm not saying that Crawford thinks he's going to lose to Boots, but he knows that it is a real fight. For me, Boots is the new Crawford. We just have to go out and get the fights to show how great he is. You know, it seems like the biggest part of selling Boots is attaching his name to Terence. I mean, that is how Showtime initially marketed this fighter, and that's how Eddie Hearn is marketing this fighter now. During Crawford's post-fight press conference, when Ennis was brought up as a future fight, the 5-weight world champion said he wouldn't take on Ennis because he's not returning to the junior middleweight division. For such a fight to move forward, Ennis would have to agree to another weight with Crawford. The problem is that Crawford is going to only want the fight for big money, and there are only certain fights that will generate that kind of money, said Hearn. You're talking about a different animal in Terence Crawford, a guy whose IQ is just off the level. You've got to have the experience and be really well schooled to compete with that guy, and that's why I said I like the Boots fight. Maybe it's just me, but it always chaps my ass when they compare Boots to Crawford. It's such a gross oversimplification of the kind of fighter that Crawford is, and the only reason they do it is because Boots does a bit of switch hitting, that he fights orthodox and he fights southpaw. I mean, let's just be honest about things here. The only reason they compared Boots to Crawford is because they were both at welterweight at the time, and Boots does a bit of switch hitting, but he doesn't even do it on the level of a Terence Crawford. Are we gonna compare every switch hitter to Terence Crawford now? Ennis, 34-0 with 30 KOs, was a former welterweight IBF mandatory challenger for Crawford, who had then moved up to junior middle last year to beat then champion Israel Madrimov for the WBA title. In doing so, Ennis was elevated from interim to full full champion by the sanctioning body, and went on to become the Ring and WBA champion as well by beating then-champion Amantis Stanionis by way of a stoppage in April. As he trains for Lima, Ennis also served as a sophisticated sparring partner for Canelo Alvarez as he prepared for Crawford.
A lot of good that did him.
But the high-level training couldn't allow Alvarez to level up, as the Mexican star admitted after defeat that it was his body that failed him.
It was an amazing performance by Terence Crawford, Hearn said. I'm gutted for Canelo, but I am actually pleased that Crawford is getting the opportunity to show how great he is, because his resume hasn't really allowed that. Don't get me wrong. He's had some good wins, but he could have beaten so many more of the elite guys from his era. To do that at 38 is impressive. We have a tendency to retire people off. I think it's a great way to go out, but I actually think Crawford can move down and win a title at 160, and that would make him a 6-weight world champion.
I agree with Eddie. I would go with Crawford to beat any one of the 3 guys at 160, and that may seem like a knee-jerk reaction, like I'm being a slave to the moment, but put the shoe on the other foot. If it were Canelo versus Adames, or Canelo versus Yanni Bekalam Kanalai, Canelo would still be the favorite to beat those fighters. And who beat Canelo?
Crawford beat Canelo.
I certainly wouldn't count him out now. I've only ever bet against Terence Crawford once. His entire boxing career, and that was in his last fight. I thought that Canelo would be too big, the size and the power would be too much, and I was wrong. So I don't plan on making that mistake again, that if Crawford were to go down and fight for a title at 160, I would pick him to win.
And I've always picked him to beat Jaron Ennis. 147, 154, 160, wherever it happens, I think Crawford beats that guy. I think it's a gross oversimplification, likening Boots Ennis to Terence Crawford for no other reason than they both do a bit of switch hitting.
And like I said, it seems like the biggest part of promoting Boots Ennis has been attaching his name to Terence, because before Showtime started doing that, nobody knew the man. Nobody talked about him, but he was there in the welterweight division the whole time. It's not until they attach his name to Terence that people start paying attention.
They're not going to fight, and that ship has sailed. The opportunity was there over 2-3 years ago when Black Prime sent Boots an offer to fight Terence, and they were more concerned with staying loyal to Showtime. So now that he's with Matchroom and Terence is 2 divisions north of him,
it's not going to happen. Eddie Hearn knows it's not going to happen also. He's just being a promoter. He's doing what a promoter is supposed to do, promoting his fighter by any means necessary, even if it means talking about a fight that he knows isn't going to happen.
He's still going to do it for the sake of the promotion, just to keep Boots' name out there, get people talking, because talking about Boots versus Bud gets more attention than talking about Boots versus Lima.
Right?
Eddie knows what he's doing. And why? He's being a promoter, a good promoter, doing what a promoter should.
But I do not read too much into it.